Start recording. Okay, so Christina looked back at her notes from yesterday where we wrote vertex form twice. Now we're writing it again. Okay, you have to know vertex form. Now, I want you to look back at your notes from the last couple sections, and I want you to identify with your group what pieces of information we have for vertex form, like what's actually filled in. So I don't give you an equation that looks like this. It has numbers in it, right? So I want you to look at all the equations we have and figure out what's typically filled in. I'm going to give your group 15 seconds. It shouldn't take you longer than that. What do we typically fill in? So I need someone to tell me what is typically filled in. What information do we normally have for vertex form? Connor. The vertex, so we know the H and the K. That's important because that helps us figure out everything else. Is there anything else that's typically filled in? Zion. So what is that? Okay, but how do you know that? The A. So in our equations, H, K, and A have a value. Sometimes you don't see the A, but it's a 1. You know it's there. But H, K, and A are filled in. Everyone agree with that?
Yeah.
So in order to write an equation, we have to know those 3 pieces. If we don't know those 3 pieces, we don't have our equation. So I'm going to give you, and we're going to work through using tables and graphs to write an equation. So we've given an equation and then you've graphed. Now I'm going to give you a graph or a table and you're going to write an equation.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going backwards. And I'm going to work through it with you so you're going to be just fine. So let's start with a table. So here's the table I'm going to give you. And we're going to, again, work backwards. So we're not graphing, we're writing an equation. So you fill it in. Okay, so looking at this table, is there anything that you can tell me about it? Which one's the vertex? Why is negative 3, 0 the vertex?
In the middle.
Okay, well, it's in the middle, but what else tells you that it's a vertex? Everything else what?
Yeah, everything else matches except that one.
Okay, so everything else around it matches, which means there's what? Starts with an S. Symmetry. So we have symmetry, which means that's our vertex. Which means I know H and K, right?
Yeah.
Sweet. That makes my life a little easier. So I'm going to write vertex as negative 3, 0, which is my H and my K. I need an A. Do you see an A in there at all?
I don't.
You don't.
No.
Okay, so what else do you notice about that table? What else does it give you? It gives you points. It gives you coordinates. And those coordinates are x, y coordinates, right?
Yeah.
So if I took vertex form and I plugged in H and K and I plugged in a coordinate, what would be left to solve for? A, and that would be it, right? So if I plug everything else in and just have A, I can solve for A. Which point would you like to use? Which one looks the easiest? I think 0, 9 looks the easiest, right? If you want to use a different point, you do you. Use a different point. So I'm going to use 0, 9 as my point, or my XY. So I'm literally going to plug in HK and XY into this equation. So Y is 9. A, I don't know. X is 0. H is negative 3. So what's going to happen? It's going to be a positive 3. And K is 0. So let's pause and make sure we got all of that. So I plugged in H, K, X, and Y. Is there anyone that doesn't see how I plugged in h, k, x, and y? So I can do it again. How come the 3 is a positive? Great question. So see in my equation, it's a negative h. When I plug in negative 3, it's negative, and then a negative 3, which becomes a positive 3. Remember when we take the h out of the equation, it switches signs? So when we put it back in, it also has to switch signs.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I solve something like this?
Yeah.
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 All right. So 9 equals 0 plus 3 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So a times 9 is 9a. Do I need to add this 0 at the end?
No.
No. Okay, so what would I do to get a by itself?
Divide by 9.
Divide by 9. So a equals 1. I know a. I know h and k because that's what I started with. Can you write an equation if you know a, h, and k?
Yeah.
Yeah. So our final answer is y equals, because again, we're only filling in h, k, and a. That's it. So y equals 1 times x plus 3 squared plus 0, if you want to do that 0 or not. So I'll take this answer or this answer. Do you have to write that 1?
No.
No. But if you want to, that's fine. So in IM 1, you wrote equations using slope-intercept form, right? Y equals mx plus b, where you had a slope, you had a point, you had an xy point, and you solved for b, and then you rewrote it all. That's exactly what we're doing here. Same idea. Different equation.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
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 All right. So let's try another one. Yes. Okay. Would you like to do one more together?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so maybe we can write it like the list of steps. Maybe that'll help too.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
So what would we say step 1 is?
Find the vertex.
Identify the vertex. Absolutely. And what are we going to say the vertex is?
Negative 2.
-2, -3 because of symmetry, right? That's my vertex. Okay, what should we say step 2 is?
Identifying our H and K.
So we know what h and k is because we identified the vertex, right? Pick a point. Okay? So you can pick any other point. Which point would we like to use this time? 0 and 13? Someone said -1 and 1 or -3 and 1. How about you choose whatever point you want? It doesn't have to be the same as mine because we're going to get the same answer. So 13 is a big number though. All right. I'm going to do -1 and 1, I think.
Okay.
But you use the one that you want. So that's my point. That's step 2. What's step 3? What's going to be step 3? Plug in, right? So we're going to plug in what? What's being plugged in? Tell me the letters that are being plugged in.
The Y, X, and the H.
So the H and the K and the X and the Y. So I'm going to come back up here. So Y is 1. And if it helps, maybe write the points out. So this is my point, and I'm going to label it XY. And this is my vertex, and I'm going to label it HK. That might be helpful, because remember when we did like distance formula last semester, I asked you to label everything before we plugged it in?
Yeah.
If you don't need to, then you don't have to, but this might be an extra step to help. So if I plug it in, remember it's going into this equation, so vertex form. So y is 1 equals, do I know a? No. X is -1. H is -2, but remember when it goes back into the equation, it's going to switch signs and become a +2. And then squared minus the 3. So I've plugged in HK and XY. What would be my next step? Solve for A. And we're going to solve for A. So 1 equals A. -1 plus 2 is 1. 1 squared is, and then 1 times A is 1A, right? Minus 3. What would I do to get A by itself? Add 3. 4 equals A. So I know what A is. I know what my HK are. What's my final step? Plug in what specifically? The A and the HK. So final answer, y equals 4 times x plus 2 squared minus 3. And you'll notice back up here at this equation, basically it's that equation taking out the x and y and replacing it back with xy. So those equations match a little bit. Do you see that? So we replaced a and then we brought back x and y. But my 2 is the same and my minus 3 is the same. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to try one. We're going to come around and check as you do. What is my vertex? 2, 5 is my vertex. So again, 2, 5 is my H and my K. And which point would we like to use? 111 is my X and my Y. So again, I don't see this to be the issue. We're plugging it in. So 11 equals A times 1 minus 2 plus 5. Consistently, we all got to that point. Okay. Oh, I forgot my square. Thank you. Here is where we were messing up. So 11 equals A. 1 minus 2 is -1, and -1 squared is +1. I think you need to write this step out because this is where you're messing up. It is A times 1, not 1 plus 5. So a lot of you did 11 equals A plus 6. You cannot add those together because this is multiplication. So some of you maybe need to write the parentheses and add an additional step. So A times 1 is just 1A. The other ones I did.
I always add extra parentheses when I do that, just to keep my numbers together. Like, you can put an extra set of parentheses around the square to keep it separate. And then just remember to keep them together, and it keeps breaking down smaller and smaller. That's how I do it, just to remind myself that I can't move it around. It has to stay there.
So every single person that added 6, basically, probably needs to have parentheses. So every single person that had 11 equals A plus 6, you need to rewrite it like this every single time with the parentheses so that you don't mess that part up. Now I can solve by subtracting 5 from both sides, which means A equals 6. Final answer is y equals 6 times x minus 2 squared plus 5.
And that was a step that I was seeing that a lot of people were leaving out. You guys were getting a equals 6, but you were forgetting to put back h, k, and a when you rewrite the actual equation. So make sure you go back and do the very final step, which is writing it in Vertex form.
So let's go back up here to our steps. So where it says plug in a, h, and k, final answer is in Vertex form. Final answer is in Vertex form. You should have an equation. You should have an equation. So solving for A is great, but your final answer is an equation. Okay. I have to flip pages because I don't have enough room. We have one more problem we're going to do. If you need to flip pages, that's fine. Remember, it is still page 64, and then you'll skip the next page so that you're on the left-hand side when we do our next warm-up. Okay, you're going to sketch this. Mine is not great. It's supposed to be a parabola. It's a little, I know, it's a little janky. But I think we can figure out all the pieces that we need. So sketch it the best you can. Maybe draw the parabola first and then write things in. That's probably what I should have done. Can you identify everything, or do I need to try that again? It's fine? Okay. Fair enough. So, as you're drawing, you can just kind of listen. All I've done here, well, maybe not. Okay, so all I've done here is I've given you a graph, but basically I've taken a table of values and plotted those points. If I asked you to write an equation, just like I did with the last 3 problems, what information do you need? Yeah.
Is that a negative 4 0?
It's a negative 1, 0. Negative 1, 0, 0, 5, 2, 9, 5, 0. It doesn't matter.
It might throw them off. We don't need to say it.
Yeah, but this is what it's going to look like. So for an equation, what do you need? A vertex and a point. Do you have a vertex? What's the vertex? 2, 9. My highest point is 2, 9. Okay, so here's my vertex. Do I have a point? I have 3 of them. Which one do you like the best? 0, 5? 5, 0? Negative 1, 0? I don't care. Pick one.
0, 5.
Okay, you pick one. And you write an equation. Same as what we did with the table. You just have to look at a graph. So you find a vertex and you pick a point. So here's your vertex. Pick any point and write an equation.